One-on-one lecture. So, hi, good morning, everyone. So, basically, today, what we're gonna be doing is mastering inventory. So, in terms of yung schedule natin, one of the things that you should anticipate is that may quiz tayo next Wednesday. So, that's gonna be face-to-face classes. And then face-to-face rin tayo on Friday. Depending on the results of the quiz last Wednesday, we might have a quiz also on Friday. So the mindset talaga here is that dapat yung quiz natin last Wednesday, medyo you allot one day just to make sure that you've mastered it. From now until Wednesday, ang goal nyo is to really get chapter 6. And then while doing that, kailangan alam nyo lang yung theory ng cash. Which I'll be discussing tomorrow on the lecture on cash. And then, after the quiz on Wednesday, dapat parang lahat ng questions nyo about chapter 6, tapusin nyo na. So that from Wednesday onwards, so Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, cash naman yung hahabulin natin in terms of the pace for the exam. So with that said, I just want to be more practical in terms of the discussion. So, for me, dun sa mga kinakabahan, ano ba yung mga 5 topics that you need to master for chapter 6? So, if you've noticed, sa chapter 5, very topical ang inventory. What does that mean? Meaning na there is a level of expertise that you need per subtopic. So, ano yung kailangan yung bantayan? Basically, like what I've mentioned, it's better to be 100% expert at one subtopic kaysa parang you know just a little bit of each. So I will now list down the 5. Number 1, inventory inclusions. So when will we ask for inventory inclusions? It's usually magkakaroon ng physical count. Ang hinahanap lang doon is what is the correct balance for your inventory. Number 2, in terms of cost flow assumptions, ito yung pinakamatrabaho to understand, but it will be parang the core of chapter 6. So that would be your cost flow assumptions. And then may 3 other subtopics na usually ino-overlook ng mga students kasi nag-focus sila sa cost flow assumptions. So that's LCNRV, estimation, and errors. So basically, yun yung 5 subtopics. Now, in terms of prioritization, if you want to do well, my suggestion is you divide your efforts into 50%, you master cost flow assumptions, and then 50% you master inventory inclusions, LCNRV, estimation, and errors. Because if you think about it, most likely, ang mga short probs would revolve around those 4 subtopics. So that's LCNRV, inventory inclusions, estimation, and errors. And then probably a more of a medium or long problem would focus on cost flow assumptions. So with that said, we're gonna be discussing the exercises. So magiging exercise-based tayo. So I'll talk about the theory first, and then I'll show you an exercise para alam nyo what to expect in terms of the quizzes, the exams, and the exercises. So first, recognizing inventory. So bakit ba tayo nagkakaroon ng inventory inclusions? Well, we go back to the concept that regardless kung perpetual or periodic yung inventory system ng company, at the end of the period, they will be counting their inventory. Now, ang problem dito is, which inventory should you count? Or which inventory should be part of your inventory records? So, ang basic framework, so first subtopic, sa inventory inclusions, isa lang yung hinahanap. Which goods should be included in your inventory account? And number 2, ano ba yung true or correct balance of your inventory based on your assessment? So for this, ang tatanungin nyo lang sa sarili nyo and yung guiding principle nyo lang would be the legal test. If you are or the company that in the exercise owns the goods, then yes, we include it in the inventory count. Kapag hindi kayong owner, meaning even if physically nasa iyo or physically far away from you, if you are not the owner of the goods, you do not include it in the count. So let's simplify. So if there's one slide that you need to master in terms of inventory inclusions, it would be this slide. Every time meron kayong mga items or exercises that you'll see, you ask yourself these four things. If it's goods that's nasa warehouse nyo and on hand and kayo yung may-ari, you include that. The only exception na hindi nyo i-count if nasa warehouse is if it's consigned goods. Meaning, hindi nyo ari, pero pina-consign lang sa inyo. You're the consignee. So only then will you exclude. Number two, whenever there's goods in transit, you just ask yourself, ano ba yung point of view of the company? If you're the buyer and it's FOB shipping point, meaning you paid for the freight, that means you're the owner of those goods in transit. On the other hand, if you're selling and FOB destination, ikaw ulit yung nagbayad ng freight, then you should also include that. So net-net, even if it's far away from you, nasa transit na, if ikaw yung nagbayad ng freight, pag-aari mo yon. The only exception is, may mga problems na sasabihin sa inyo, siniship na raw yung goods, pero nasa dock pa, nasa dock. Hindi pa siya, nasa warehouse mo pa lang. Hindi siya lumipat. Wala siya dun sa ship, wala siya dun sa truck. Pag nasa dock mo pa rin, that's physically with you and it's not in transit. So that means yun yung exception to number 2. And then number 3 and number 4 just talks about even if the goods are physically away from you, hindi siya nasa warehouse mo, if you still own them, then you should include it. So meaning, if it's goods na nasa kabilang warehouse or nasa ibang warehouse sa Davao, sa Cebu, na ibang company, if it's on consignment, meaning pinabigay mo sa kanila for them to sell, pero ikaw yung ultimate owner, ikaw yung consigner, you include. And then finally, if pinahiram mo sa customer, sabihin mo, oh, sige, i-trial mo yan. Kahit nasa customer, if ikaw pa rin yung may-ari, you include. So net-net, for inventory inclusion, the first subtopic, you just ask yourself, if we own these goods, then we include it. So ano ba yung format? What's our framework in order to solve this? So in the uploaded lecture, we talked about Mikhail. What I want to focus on is paano nyo ba sasagutin? First step is you look at ano ba yung pagkabilang ng accountant nila. So always check, ano ba yung 740,000? Ito yung based on the count of the accountant, ito yung ending inventory. Ito yung i-check yung 740,000 kung tama ba or mali. The next thing that you want to do is you go through each item and then determine ano bang type of item siya. Is it goods on hand and own? Is it in transit, etc., etc. So on the first column, under Mikhail ending year-end inventory, we will just list down ano bang type siya. And using that type, we ask ourselves two things. In-include ba ni accountant yung item na yon in the 740? And then the next question is, dapat ba niyang in-include? So in-include ba niya? And then dapat niya bang in-include? Kapag in-include niya, yes. But hindi naman niya should be included, hindi naman niya dapat, we should carve it out, meaning subtract from 740,000. Next scenario is, kung sinama niya sa 740,000, tapos tama naman, then syempre, you don't do anything. Tama yung analysis niya. And then the last is, hindi niya in-include, pero dapat included, we have to add back. So, ganun lang yung format. So, in terms of the exercise, you can go back to the recorded lecture. Pag consigned goods, automatic, the answer is, it should not be included kasi hindi mo pag may-ari. In this case, you are a consignee. So, we carve out. So, minus 250,000. Next, if you purchase, so ang POV mo is buyer, pero FOB destination, ikaw ba yung nagbayad ng freight? No. Therefore, it should not be included. Sinaba niya ba? No. So, tama, ignore. For office supplies, supplies is not inventory. So, we always carve that out. Supplies should not be counted as inventory. So, kinarve out rin natin. Next, ikaw yung seller. Ano yung terms? FOB shipping. So, sino yung nagbayad ng freight pag FOB shipping? BSP, si buyer. So, hindi ikaw yung nagbayad ng freight. Pero, ano yung clue or important part dito sa FOB shipping? According to the fourth item, 1, 2, 3, 4, The goods were not included in the count because they were sitting on the dock. So ito yung pinakamahirap na item in this exercise because it's telling you that yes, pag FOB shipping tapos seller ka, you were not supposed to include it, but the goods were not in transit. Nasa dock pa lang siya. So pag nasa dock siya, hindi pa siya in transit, so we don't apply the FOB shipping point, FOB destination point. Technically, that's still counted as own goods in the warehouse. So, that's the fourth item. And then, pag may sales return, pag nagkamali ka, kala mo nabenta mo na lahat. 60,000 kala mo yung nabenta mo. But in reality, 8,000 lang yung nabenta mo. Yung 52,000 na dapat kala binawas mo na dun sa 740,000, you have to add it back. Because ang tama lang na dapat na sinubtract was 8,000. And then finally, pag obsolete na yung items, we don't include them. So pag obsolete yung items, we don't include them. So with that, basically, ito yung mahabang version, right? Including the other loops. But honestly, it's just the first two columns that you need to do, right? Itong analysis na to is just to help you. But in terms of the exams, how I would solve it, or in terms of the quizzes, how I would solve it is two columns. Ano ba yung start ay yung ending inventory niya based on the start, and then I either carve out, walang effect, or add back. And then I'll arrive with the correct ending inventory.
It's not since return, yung the unsold is parang naging temporarily held by at least.
So basically, parang ang nangyari dito is yung 740,000 did not include the whole 60,000 because sabi niya, nabenta na eh. So wala, hindi ko na inventory yun. That's gonna be COGS already. Yung 50, pero ano ba yung actual na benta niya? 8,000 lang. So meaning, dapat 52 out of that 60 should be added back dun sa 740,000. Yes. So with that said, I want us to just apply this for the first part. So let's look at this next problem. So si Captain Hook. So as you can see, pareho lang yung format. So for me, make sure lang na you know the different scenarios. So we apply the same framework. Again, you only need the first two columns. I'm just showing you the parang next 5 because this will help you in terms of answering. So A, on February 26, nag-ship ka raw ng goods costing 800 and you charge the customer 1,000. So ano yung term? So you're the seller. Ang term is FOB shipping point. And then, the reporting indicates that the customer received the goods on March 2. So the first question ko is, what date is it today? Usually, when you do inventory inclusions, it's at the last day of the month. So meaning, ang point of view natin is February 28. So, first thing is, let's classify. This is a sale and it's FOB shipping. So, ikaw ba yung nagbayad ng freight? No. Yung buyer, yung customer. Therefore, is it included? Well, no. Should it be included? No. Because hindi ikaw yung nagbayad. So, therefore, tama na hindi niya in-include. Next. On February 26, Tinkerbell Inc. shipped goods to Captain Hook under the terms FOB shipping point. So, ikaw si Captain Hook. So, in this case, you are the buyer. So, what do we do kapag shipping point? So, it's a purchase FOB shipping point. Sinamin niya ba? No, kasi 0. So, every time na, kasi since 0 yung count, so you're doing the count for the first time, all of the is it included will always be no. So, dapat ba natin sinama to? Yes. Because you're the buyer, it's in transit, and it's shipping point. So, we add 480. Next, Captain Hook had 650 on inventory isolated in the warehouse. The inventory is designated for a customer who has requested that the goods be shipped on March 10. So, this is another scenario na first time nyo makita, right? So, paano natin iti-treat to? Should we include something that was isolated in the warehouse, naka-reserved na for the customer? The answer is yes. So technically, this is still on your warehouse. You still own it. Kahit naka-reserve siya and designated for a customer, it's still yours on February 28. So for this, we add it back at 650. Next. Also included in the Captain Hook's warehouse is 700 on inventory that Wendy producers ship. on consignment. So ito, this number 4 means may goods raw in your warehouse. Pero those goods are from Wendy na in consignment. So are you the consigner or the consignee? In this case, you're the consignee. Therefore, do you own it? No. And therefore, it should not be included. So last two, nag-issue ka ng purchase order, so you're gonna buy. And it's FOB destination point. So this is a purchase. Ikaw ba yung nagbayad ng freight? No, because destination point. Therefore, it's in transit, we don't include. So wala tayong gagawin. And then lastly, nagkaroon ka ng sale, FOB destination. So sale, ikaw ba yung nagbayad ng freight? Yes. So therefore, we include 200. So pag tinanong sa inyo, the correct ending inventory would be 1,330 because, sorry, this should not be 0, but at the start, you had the amount. So basically, when you add all of these, 1,330 siya. So 480 plus 650 plus 200, the correct ending inventory would be 1,330. So first subtopic, ito yung pinakamadaling i-master. So I suggest be good at it. Unfortunately, sa exams, most likely, ang itatanong sa inyo would be, what's the correct ending inventory? Anong problema ko dito? If hindi nyo to 100% na master, may isa lang kayong mali. Hindi yan magbabalance to 1,330. So, for those that want to be experts at inventory inclusions, you can check out other exercises. I'll upload extra exercises. I'll look for extra exercises for us so that mas ma-practice kayo. I'll upload it after this. So next would be, so we're done with inventory inclusions, right? The next problem would be cost flows. Cost flows, again, ito yung mahabang portion of chapter 6. And when you understand the theory behind it, mas madali siya to understand. So for inventory inclusions, what we're asking for lang is two things. Pag cost flow siya, dalawa lang yung itatanong sa inyo, most likely. What is the cost of goods sold? And what is the ending inventory? And how do we get that? By really being an expert in our cost flow equation. So, balik tayo sa chapter 5 quiz. Super important nitong equation na to, na sobrang papaulit-ulit ko. Beginning inventory plus cost of goods purchased is equal to cost of goods available for sale. And then yung COGAS will be split. A portion of the COGAS will go to your COGS kasi nabenta mo siya. And a portion of ending inventory will be from the COGAS kasi hindi mo siya nabenta. Now, for those na nakapanood ng recorded lecture, you'll be able to see na bakit lang mahirap si chapter 6. Mahirap si chapter 6 because in an ideal world, yung beginning inventory mo, yung purchase batch 1 mo and purchase batch 2 mo, pareho lang yung purchase price nila at a cost per unit of 20,000, 20,000, 20,000. So that when you arrive with your 600,000 COGAS, dalawa lang naman yung titingnan mo. How many items is attached to the COGAS? So that's 30 units. And what is the total cost? 600,000. And then sasabihin sa'yo, nakabenta ng 16, hindi nabenta yung 14. So madali lang to. We just multiply 16 by 20,000 kasi consistent across the period. 20,000 lang yung purchase price. Now, kailan tayo nagkakaproblema? Nagkakaproblema tayo in the real world because when you buy items, nag-iiba either yung price yung binibilihan mo or kumukuha ka from another supplier and nag-iiba yung cost per unit. So now, madali pa rin isolve si COGAS. What we do is just multiply the number of units by the cost per unit, get the total cost per batch. So batch 1 is beginning inventory, batch 2 yung purchase, and batch 3 yung September 15. So still, we have 30 units, same as the base scenario. Pero yung total cost natin is 900,000. Now the problem is, tinatanong tayo, what's the COGS, what's the ending inventory? The question is, how do you value? Parang do we multiply it by 20, by 30, by 40? Well, there are different ways to solve for it. And dito papasok si cost flow assumptions. So, I will leave you, in terms of homework, I will leave you to go back to the recorded lecture in terms of like the specific identification. But the idea lang behind it is that sa specific identification, dun sa drone problem, ang sinabi niya lang niya is, what if tatakan natin lahat ng drones ng tags from 1 all the way to 30. So now, kapag binilang ko, titingnan ko yung tag and then I'll identify, itong natira sa batch 1 to. Itong 4 na natira sa batch 2. Itong 6 na natira sa batch 3. So yung 14, I can exactly know how much it should cost, right? Kasi ima-match ko lang siya. Si batch 1, 20,000 per unit, so times 4, 80,000. Si batch 2, 4 units at 30,000, so 120. Si batch 3, 6 lang yung natira, so I multiplied by 14,000, so 240,000. So now, my ending inventory is 440,000. And because alam natin na COGAS is just either magiging ending inventory or COGS, yung 440,000, I'll just subtract from the 900,000 to get your COGS. So, madali lang siya. Bakit ayaw ng mga tao ang specific identification? Because imagine mo, you're a seller of erasers and you're selling it at 1,000 bulk. It's super impossible to tag this and then bibilangin mo which batch you come. So, masakit siya sa ulo. So now, people have devised 3 other assumptions. So, ito yung, for me, tandaan nyo lang is, FIFO-lish, first in, first out, refers to the COGS. Last is still here, refers to the ending inventory. What does FIFO-lish mean? Ang ibig sabihin niya is, we're looking at yung nabenta. 16 units. What it's saying is, first in, first out. So out of this 30 units, ang una niyang i-consider na nabenta is yung first in. So si batch 1 muna, then si batch 2, then si batch 3. So ang gagawin natin is, uubusin natin si batch 1, so 10. So 10, 16 minus 10, may 6 pang natira. Saan natin kukunin yung next 6? Sa batch 2. Kasi first in, first out. By using that, we'll arrive with the COGS. And then another way of getting the ending inventory is just 900,000 minus COGS of 380 will be your 520. Pero another way of looking at this problem is FIFO refers to your COGS. Ending inventory is LISH. Last is still here. So pare, ang binigay sa inyo is 14 units yung nasa ending. So FIFO, LISH. FIFO, first in, first out. So nabenta mo na. Last is still here. So yung 14, we look naman sa end. Right? Last is still here. So 14, uubusin mo muna yung last batch at 10. So 14 minus 10, so 40,000, so 400,000. And then yung 4 na remaining, kay batch 2. Kaya, naging 520. Basically, ganun lang yung concept ng FIFO-lish. Sa LIFO fish, baliktad. Basically, baliktad lang. Wherein, yung 16 units, pag LIFO fish, LIFO refers to the COGS. So, last in, first out. Yung 16, ang assumption naman niya, ito muna, yung last batch muna yung mabibenta. Last in, first na mabibenta. So, 16, 10 will come from batch 3, 4, 6 will come from batch 2. And then, LIFO fish, first is still here. So, yung ending inventory mo would be, the first batch, uubusin mo muna, and then, the second batch. And then finally, the last assumption is weighted average. Meaning, for me, this is the one that makes the most sense, right? Na parang, bakit tayo nagpapakahirap with the assumptions? What we do is let's get the weighted average unit. And how do you get the weighted average unit? If ang total cost natin ng COGAS is 900,000, and may 30 units tayo, why don't we just divide 900,000 divided by 30, and we'll get 30,000 per unit as an average. So we multiply this wave unit, wave cost, to 16. So 16 times 30,000, 480. And then 14 times 30 is 420. So, madali siyang intindihin. Pero as you can see, with the different assumptions, iba-iba yung impact niya sa COGS. Magkakaiba yung COGS figures mo. Magkakaiba yung ending inventory mo. So, in terms of theory, what do I want you to remember? kapag FIFO, we accept FIFO because it follows the flow. Pag pataas yung rising prices, pataas yung ending inventory, and pataas yung gross profit natin. So, iisipin nyo lang, ending inventory in COGS, because they're part of 100% ng COGAS, pag mataas yung ending inventory mo, bababa yung cost of sales mo. For example, ending inventory 50%, 50% cost of sales. Pag mataas yung ending inventory ko, 70%, what's my COGS? 30%. So, palagi siyang baliktad. Ito, palagi itong baliktad. So, ang tatandaan nyo, pag FIFO, it follows the flow. Meaning, pag pataas yung prices, yung mga purchase prices, pataas yung ending inventory, pataas yung gross profit. Pag pababa si prices, pababa si ending inventory, pababa si gross profit. So, of course, yung cost of sales will be the opposite of what happens to your ending inventory. So, simply, just to prove to you, tingnan nyo sa equation na doon sa scenario natin. 900,000 yung COGAS. Sino yung pinakamataas yung ending inventory? Si FIFO. Kasi rising prices, siya yung pinakamataas yung ending inventory. And then siya yung pinakamababa yung COGS if you compare these four. Right? So therefore, tandaan nyo lang to. But this is more of a theory question lang. So ang more important is to know na yung LIFO, we don't really use this in practice. LIFO is not accepted because it does not follow the physical flow of the goods. So in practice, it's either FIFO or WAVE or specific identification kung konti lang yung binibenta. So another theory point, matatakot kayo na what if magpaiba-iba sila ng assumptions year in, year out? That's not allowed because of the consistency principle. Meaning that whatever they use at the start of the period, yun yung gagamitin nila throughout. Pag nag-iba sila ng method, kailangan nilang i-disclose. But that's not usually gonna happen. So, any questions before I proceed?
Kanina may parang periodic lang siya. May ganun po ba?
Yeah. Yeah. So, good question. So, I wanted you to familiarize now with how the assumption works. Right? So, tatlo lang naman yan, right? FIFO-ish, LIFO-fish, WAVE. Bakit siya mahirap? Because dalawa yung inventory systems natin. So, magka-times 2 yung assumptions. Different ways of solving FIFO-ish, LIFO-fish, WAVE, depending on perpetual or periodic. Now, ano lang yung isipin nyo para hindi kayo ma-overwhelm? It looks many kasi 6 siyang scenarios. But honestly, 3 concepts lang or 3 frameworks lang yung kailangan yung aralin. For FIFO-ish, this is gonna be your favorite. Pag lumabas to, hindi nyo na kailangan pakilaman kung perpetual or periodic. You account for it the same way. It will give you the same results. Number 2, mas gusto niya si periodic sa cost flows because si FIFO-ish, LIFO-fish, it's the same way of solving. Quantity method pa rin siya. So the first thing na I want you to be an expert at is the quantity method. Pero, ang problema kay LIFO-fish, if it's perpetual, may bago tayong framework, stock card, which I'll show later. And then, si WAVE, magkaiba talaga siya. Moving average and weighted average. Pero, for me, ito lang yun. Kapag periodic, usually, mas madali siya. Si perpetual yung mahirap. Why? Because it updates every time may sale or may purchase. So, simplify natin. You just need to know quantity method. You just need to know stock card, yung moving average, and yung weighted average. So, for me, mahirap intindihin to on a theory basis. Mas madali siyang ma-appreciate in terms of a form of an exercise. So, this was supposed to be your problem set. But then again, I'll discuss it already and then I'll look for other exercises for you. Para lang mas marami tayong bala in terms of the exercises. So, basically, the idea lang is, ito lang yung base scenario niyo. May beginning inventory na 100 units, bumili siya ng 200 units, and then at the end of the year, may 80 siyang natira. And then, we're gonna use all 6 assumptions. And then after that, we will show you na iba-iba yung COGS and ending inventory niya per assumption. So, let's start. There are 6 scenarios that we'll do. Let's first go to the first 2 scenarios, si FIFO. So again, kay FIFO, we like FIFO because regardless kung periodic or perpetual, we'll use the same. So first skill na I want you to do pag cost flow assumptions is know how to take notes. And how do I want you to take notes? You categorize each of the transactions and then list down ano ba yung units, ano ba yung unit cost, and ano ba yung total cost. And then pag sales, just make sure na it's a negative. Now, how did I arrive with this table? This table mimics the cost flow framework. Beginning, balance, purchase, and then may sale, and then at the end is ending inventory. So, let's first master quantity method. The first step is, I don't want you to look at the cost first. Always start with the quantity, kaya siya quantity method. The important thing in quantity method is let's get the ending inventory in terms of quantity. Wala mo ng cost. And honestly, in this problem, madali lang siya. Binigay, 80 units. Pero I want you to know na kapag missing si quantity sold or missing si ending inventory, this is just basically, yung kugas in terms of quantity, either nabenta lang siya or naging ending inventory, right? So the first step is, what is our cost of goods available for sale in terms of quantity? It's 100 beginning inventory plus purchase of 200. So in terms of the whole scenario, may 300 units siya na pwedeng ibenta. Now, a portion of that, mabebenta niya, a portion of that, hindi niya mabebenta. In the problem, hindi sinabi how many units yung nabenta niya. Pero we can derive. If 80 yung natira, ilan yung nabenta niya? 220. So, in the other scenarios, pag binigay na sa inyo yung sales figure, just know na how to compute for your ending quantity, ending inventory quantity. Again, we're talking about quantity, hindi pa cost, right? The number of items. So step 1, you get the ending inventory in the quantity. Step 2, dun na papasok si cost. So, get ending inventory cost. Ano ulit yung assumption natin now? It's FIFO-lish. So, ano yung concept na gagamitin natin pag FIFO-lish? Last is still here. So, if 80 units is last is still here, how do we get how much we should get? So, ang gagawin lang natin is, out of the 80 units, sino yung una natin titingnan? Si batch 1 na beginning balance or si batch 2, yung latest purchase? Si batch 2, kasi last is still here. So, ilan yung binili niya ng batch 2? 200. Ilan yung natira? 80. So, 80, all 80 will come from batch 2. So, anong unit cost yung i-multiply natin kay 80? 130, hindi 100. Therefore, meron na tayo ending inventory at 10,400. So, may 1 point na kayo out of the 2. Ano yung next na hanapin? COGS. So, how do we get COGS? The last step is the cost flow method. So, let's first get the COGAS. Paano natin kukunin yung COGAS in terms of cost? It's just beginning inventory cost, which is 10,000. Purchases cost at 26. So, ano yung COGAS natin? 36,000. So, itong 300, aside from the 300, this is 36,000. Right? And therefore, if our ending inventory is 10,400, ano yung COGS natin? It's just 36,000 minus ending inventory of 10,400. Our COGS will be 25,600. That's basically quantity method. So, if there's parang pare, nalulunod kayo sa cost flow, at the very least, please know quantity method so that you can solve for FIFO-lish types of problems. So for me, sa cost flow, kung pare, wala na kayong time or na-pressure kayo in terms of like the number, focus on FIFO-lish and focus on wave. Yung later natin pag-usapan. Any questions? Clear pa naman so far? So with that said, dalawa lang ihahanapin natin. Out of the 36,000 COGAS, 25,600 COGS, 10,400 ending inventory. So, ano yung na-prove natin? Kapag FIFO-lish, regardless kung perpetual or periodic, same yung results. So we're happy with FIFO. Punta naman tayo sa LIFO fish. Sa LIFO fish, honestly, pareho lang yung way of solving. Pero iba si perpetual and si periodic. So punta muna tayo kay periodic kasi quantity method rin siya. So pag periodic and LIFO fish, paano natin isi-solve? Again, ulitin lang natin. First step is we get the ending inventory quantity. So that is 80. Again, it's the cost of goods available for sale quantity minus the quantity sold is equal to your ending inventory. From there, we get the cost. Pero, ano yung pagkakaiba? Since LIFO fish, yung 80 units will come from, first is still here. So yung 80, sa batch 1 ba to, na beginning balance, or sa purchase, na batch 2? Batch 1. Kasi, LIFO fish, first is still here. Therefore, yung 80, we will use 100 out of the 100 units. So magkano yung unit cost natin now? 100, not 130. So ang ending inventory natin is 8,000. So if alam na natin from the first assumption na 36,000, automatic para hindi na kayo mag-isip doon sa or para hindi na kayo mag-cost flow. How much should be our costs? 36 minus 8 is 28,000. So just to check, 28,000. So, for me, kung alam nyo to, no need na to do this, right? Just get your COGAS automatic and then subtract your ending inventory. Yun lang naman ginagawa natin eh. What is the COGAS in terms of cost? Subtract mo lang ending inventory cost, you'll get your COGAS. You don't need to, I mean, I'm showing you this because this is how you solve it using the framework. So, there. So, now, nasa LIFO fish pa rin tayo. Pero pag perpetual, ito na yung parang quote-unquote complicated. Pero honestly, if you know lang the format, ano lang siya eh. It's very procedural. So, ano yung gusto kong gawin nyo? Kapag LIFO fish and perpetual, we make a stock card. And honestly, a stock card will just look like this. Ano ba yung purchases mo? Ano yung sales? Ano yung running balance? And then under each of the columns, just identify ilang units, ano yung cost per unit, so CPU, and ano yung total cost. So, all three columns up. So, clear pa? First step is, titingnan natin sa beginning inventory. Saan papasok si beginning inventory? Well, it's not purchase, it's not sales, it's your running balance. So, we have 100 units, ang cost per unit natin is 100, so our total cost is 10,000. Next, nagkaroon ka ng purchase. So, ito yung balance mo at the end of number 1. So, let's go to number 2. Nagkaroon ka ng purchase. Yung purchase will go here in purchases. So, 200 times 130, 26. So, now, i-copy lang natin yung what happens in the purchase to the running balance. So, ano na yung running balance natin? Ang running balance natin is may 100 units tayo worth 10,000. May 200 units tayo na worth 26. So sa stock card, wala tayong ina-add. Inaano lang natin sila. Binabatch natin. May isang 100 units na 10,000. May isang batch na 200 units, 26,000. And then, nagkaroon ng sale. Ilan yung units na nabenta? So dito kayo magpapanik. Hindi binigay. Pero again, saan papasok yung paano natin kukunin yung missing units? Alam natin that the available cost of goods available for sale is 300 units. 80 yung natira. So ilan nabenta natin? 220. So paano na natin i-account yung 220? Dito papasok yung running balance. This is batch 1, batch 2. Ano yung assumption natin? LIFO fish. So ano yung nabenta? Last in, first out. So last in, first out. So 220, sino yung priority natin uubusin? Si batch 2 or si batch 1? Last in, first out. Si batch 2. So titingnan natin, in the running balance, ito yung last batch. So uubusin ko muna to as much as possible. So minus 200 units times 130 minus 26,000. And then may butal. So, naubos si batch 2. So, sino na yung next? Yung batch 1. So, we subtract 20 units from batch 1. And therefore, 20 units times 100 is equal to 2,000. So, balance after sales is, may 80 units tayo, which is still our ending inventory. But now, it's at 8,000. So, our ending inventory cost is at 8,000. So, we'll get 28,000 in terms of COGS. So, our cost of goods sold is 28,000. Our ending inventory is 8,000. So, in this scenario, the reason why nagkapareho sila is because it's only one sale in purchase transaction. Usually, magkaiba sila, right? Pero because straightforward lang or basic yung problem, kaya denote na different yung results nila generally. Pero I just wanted you to show you the basic way of using stock card and quantity method. But generally, ang expectation nyo is magkaiba sila. Next and last. So we're done now with FIFO. We're done now with LIFO. The last is wave. So sa wave, let's start with perpetual. So sa perpetual, ang kailangan lang natin will be to identify your moving average. So as the name suggests, what we need to do is to find the average and then we expect na it moves. So how will we go about it? So may table tayo, pero rather than versus the stock card, si moving average is more straightforward. Tatlo lang. Units, cost per unit, ano yung total cost. So we start with beginning balance. Our beginning balance is 100. Our cost per unit is 100. So 10,000 yung cost. So ano yung nangyari next? Nagkaroon ng purchase. Nagka-purchase ng 200 units, nagkaroon ng 130 na cost per unit, ang total cost is 26,000. So, ang rule sa moving average is every time may sale, may purchase return, etc. Anything na may happen, you always get the balance. So, anong gagawin natin sa moving average? Unlike the stock card na yung balance natin is comprised of different batches. Sa moving average, ina-add niya yung balance. So, 100 plus 200, we have 300 units in total after the purchase. Magkano yung total cost? 36,000. 10 plus 26,000 is 36. So what is your average? 36,000 divided by 300, 120. So ito na, I'll tell you na. Usually, for moving average, gumagalaw lang siya every time there's a purchase or purchase return. Meaning, itong 120 in blue, magiging 120 pa rin siya kapag may benta ka. Gumagalaw lang yung average every time there's a purchase or a purchase return. But in this case, 120. So pag nagka-sale ka, you use the pinaka-recent na average. So yung 220, ito yung pinaka-recent na average. So times 120, you'll get 36 minus 26,400. You'll arrive with 80 units na 120 pa rin. So every time may sales return, hindi gumagalaw yung moving average, right? So again, simple example lang, just to showcase how to solve for it. So our ending inventory is 9,600. So our cost of goods available for sale is 36,000. 9,000 yung ending inventory. How much yung COGS? It's gonna be 27,000. So again, dalawa lang naman yung hinihingi sa cost flow assumptions. 26,400 and ending inventory of 9,600. So, sa moving average, the good thing about it is it also tells you your cost of goods sold. Paano nyo malalaman yung cost of goods sold? Well, you just look at any sales. Ito mo, 26,400. Ito na yung cost. So, cost of 26,400 and then 9,600 pala, sorry. So, 9,600, sorry, my bad. So, 26,400. So, that's perpetual moving average. And then last would be periodic weighted average. Ito, so ano yung general scenario? Kapag perpetual, matrabaho siya. Pag periodic, mas straightforward. Sa periodic, ang gagawin lang natin is, we get the wave per unit. So how do we get the wave per unit? We just add the 100 units, the 200 units, 300 units, and then, alam natin na 36. So itong 120, we call that the wave per unit. So ito, how do you arrive at the balance? It's all of the COGAs that you need. So any beginning inventory, any purchases, you'll align with the balance of 300 units. So now we apply the wave per unit to the cost flow. So 300 units, 120 yung wave per unit natin. So nakabenta ka raw ng 220. So we apply 220 to the 120 per unit. So 26,400. Again, bakit same yung lumabas? Different results siya generally, but because isa lang sale lang in purchase transaction, usually, pareho lang yung lalabas, right? But the idea lang here is that yung 129 hindi nagagalaw. That's gonna be your figure for the rest of the method of solving. So now, we compare. Again, remember, FIFO dish, usually same results. LIFO, different results. Wave, different results. As you can see, iba-iba yung assumptions, iba-iba yung results ng COGS and ending inventory. So the first question is, which cost flow would result in the highest income? So dito, magpapanik na kayo. Parang, how do we get the income, right? So for me, the idea lang would be, ang answer is FIFO dish. Bakit? It will be the one that results in the highest income. It's because under FIFO, if you compare, sino pinakamaliit na COGS? See, 25,600. So if they ask you, which one would result the highest net income? Another way of looking at that question is, who has the lowest cost of goods sold? Because, what? We have a revenue or sales of 100,000. Tapos ang missing lang is COGS. And then ito na yung net income natin or gross profit. Whoever has the lowest COGS will result in the highest income. So for example, my COGS is 10, ang net income ko is 90. My COGS is 30, my income is 70. So whoever has the lowest cost of goods sold, that will be the one that will have the highest net income. So for this, sino pinakamababang COGS? Yung 25,600. So it has the lowest COGS, you have the least expense, and therefore you have the highest net income. So, for example, let's assume the revenue is 30,000. Magiging 4,400 yung net income nito, 2,000 nito, and 3,600. So the one who has the highest net income will be the one that has the lowest cost of goods sold. Next, which cost flow would result in inventories approximating the current costs in the balance sheet? So sino raw yung pinakamalapit dun sa cost in the balance sheet? It's still gonna be FIFO. Because the balance sheet refers to your ending inventory naman. Current cost meaning sino ba yung pinaka-up to date? And it's FIFO-ish because what it's considering is that the last is still here. So this is more of a theory question that I want you to understand. So sino yung pinaka nagbibigay ng current cost? It's FIFO because it treats the last batch as the ending inventory. Last is still here. Kaya siya yung pinaka quote-unquote up to date in terms of the balance sheet. And then lastly, which cost flow method will result in LOEs paying the least taxes? So I know we haven't done tax, but just in case, the answer is LIFO-fish. Another way of looking at it is, ang taxes kasi, when you're working, the higher your income, the higher yung tax na binabayaran nyo, right? So technically, another way of looking at it is, the one that pays the least taxes is the one that has the least net income. So sino yung least net income? The one that has the highest COGS. So see LIFO-fish. So highest COGS will give you your lowest income. Taxes are based on your net income. So the lowest taxes will be LIFO-fish. So assume 30% income tax. ito yung mga net income natin from the other scenario. So if you apply 30%, sino yung pinakamaliit yung tax? The one that has the lowest net income. So yun lang yung mga other sub-questions na you need to take note sa cost flow method. And with that, we're done with the 6 assumptions. Any questions in terms of all of it?
Sir, in general po ba na parang pagkakasunod-sunod ng isa highest and lowest ng ano?
Is iPhone.
Bale, FIFO, wave, tapos na ito. Ganun po ba yun dyan?
It depends on the trend of the prices. What do I mean by that? Naalala nyo, so when we say trend of the prices, you look at purchases in terms of batches. So batch 1, 10, 20, batch 2, 30, batch 3, 40. Ano yung trend ng prices? Pataas. So dahil pataas, FIFO follows the flow. So dahil pataas yung prices, our ending inventory will be pataas. Why? Bakit pataas yung inventory? Last is still here. So ang mas malaking inventory, dito kukuha ka sa 40 rather than dun sa 20. Dahil FIFO has the highest ending inventory, your COGS will be at its lowest. And therefore, your gross profit will be at its highest. Right? So, FIFO to. FIFO. Yes. Yeah. Oh, correct. So, sa LIFO, saan na kukunin yung ending inventory niya? LIFO, fish. So, kukunin yung ending inventory here. So, ang ending inventory mo will be at its lowest. Your COGS will be at its highest. And your gross profit will be at its lowest. Kaya ito yung nangyari dito sa scenario na to. Versus, sorry, lilipat naman ako. Versus, let's say, on November 1, my purchase price is 90,000. On November 10, nagkaroon ng any circumstance, naging 60. And then on November 15, naging 30. Batch 1, batch 2, batch 3. Let's look at FIFO. Let's look at the ending inventory. What is ending inventory? FIFO, LISH. Last is still here. So saan natin unang kukunin? Sa 90, sa 60, or sa 30? Sa 30. It's the lowest. So our ending inventory will be at its lowest. Dahil mababa sa ending inventory, our COGS will be at its highest. So our gross profit will be at its lowest. On the other hand, LIFO, saan mo kukunin yung ending inventory ng LIFO? LIFO, fish. First is still here. So ang ending inventory natin will be 90. 90. So our ending inventory will be at its highest. Our COGS will be at its lowest. And our gross profit will be at its highest. So ano yung mas general rule? FIFO follows the flow. Kapag mataas yung prices, mataas si ending inventory. Pag bababa si prices, bababa si ending inventory. Correct. Price per unit. And then let's just say na 1 unit lang siya. So technically 90-60. So ito na talaga yung ending inventory na. Right? So just to put numbers para isa pang yung ending inventory na, let's say 1 unit lang each. Ang magiging ending inventory niya is 40. And then yung COGS niya would be 50, parang ganyan. So something to that effect, right? So for me, I don't want you to stress about it too much. Mas importante lang na alam nyo in theory that FIFO follows the flow. Yun. Yeah, true.
Paano ba yung sa 10, 30, tapos yung sa 15, 60?
So, nag-iiba-iba. So, pag nag-iiba-iba, then I think you just have to solve for it. Parang mas trends siya, right? So, ang idea lang is, the reason why sa accounting, we like FIFO is because it reflects the current situation of the market. Kung ano yung cost ng purchase goods mo right now, FIFO will tell you based on their ending inventory. Right? Kasi minsan, pag LIFO ka, you're looking at the past. Diba? Na parang, ang taas yung prices mo sa past, it doesn't help you as much. Kaya ayaw natin ng LIFO. Because it always looks at the first batch. Ang gusto natin is up-to-date. The more up-to-date the information, the better. And ang mas importante sa atin is the valuation of your ending inventory. Kasi, imagine nyo, kung ako, parang company ako, right? And then, parang gusto kong i-manipulate yung cost of my inventories. I can do that with LIFO kasi nasa first batch ko i-base yung cost ng inventory ko eh. So, parang kung gusto ko mataas yung inventory ko, then hindi ako bibili until parang yung first batch yung magagamit ko. Versus, wala kang choice sa FIFO na kung ano yung latest purchase price mo, yun yung magiging valuation ng ending inventory. So, that's the nitty-gritty of all of it. But I think, parang if looking at parang mga sa quizzes and everything, it's really the process that you need to master. And then, ito lang yun. I understand, as a student, parang ako, it's hard to think about like 6 different scenarios. So for me, ang mindset ko lang is, basta pag FIFO, I'll get those points. Dun sa wave, I'll get those points. Sa LIFO, bahala na. Parang, parang kung may priority, right? So, again, I want you to master 100% of one subtopic rather than may konti-unti kayong alam for each subtopic kasi that's the way you won't get the point, right? So, yun yung mindset natin in terms of studying for it. So, okay, yun yung basic, right? So, let's make it more complicated. Usually, ganito yung types of problems na you'll encounter. It looks intimidating, but we'll just follow the same way of solving. So, ito yung mga binigay. Number 1, huwag kayong matakot sa exam. Number 1, January yung tinitingnan nating month. So, itong ending inventory at December 31, what is this on January? That's your beginning inventory. Ganun lang yung rule. Pag December 31 or any end of the month, the end of one period means the beginning of the next period. So, ending inventory, ang beginning inventory natin is 150 and 70. Ano yung mga nangyari? Nagka-purchase, may nabenta ka pero may nag-return. May nag-purchase, may nag-return ka ng purchase. May nagbenta, purchase, benta. So, ano yung mga new concepts na we'll need to understand? Yung mga returns, right? So, let's look at how we're gonna be solving. Same scenario, 6 assumptions. Let's first start with the simplest. FIFO list. Ano yung step 1 ng quantity method? We get the ending inventory quantity in terms of units. So we always follow na, okay, may beginning balance tayo of 150. Nagkaroon tayo ng purchase, 100. So, nag-add yung units. Nagkaroon ng sale. So, pag nakabenta ka, dadagdag yung units mo or babawas? Babawas. 150. Pero pag may nag-return, add. So, 10. O, bumili ka ulit. 75. Pero, nag-solid ka, purchase return, tataas or bababa yung quantity mo? Bababa. So, 15. Nagbenta ka ulit. 50. 50. 100. Nag-purchase ka ulit. And then, nagbenta ka ulit. If you add all of those together, it will give you an ending inventory of 110. First step, we're done with the first step. The question is, how do we cost? So ito yung number of items, quantity. Let's now look at the cost. Sorry. So, another way of looking at it is cost of goods available for sale, meaning in-add ko lang si beginning, si purchase return, si purchase, at saka si purchase to get 410. And then yung sales, 300. But this is more of a easier way of looking at it. Next is FIFO is Lish. Last is still here. So, saan natin kukunin yung 110? Sa purchase batch? Sa latest. So, una, 110. So, ano yung pinaka-latest na purchase natin? On January 1? 23. So, yung 110, 100 of those, we will use the unit cost 28. So, 2,800. Sa next 10, saan kukunin yung 10? Doon sa, anong unit cost yung gagamitin ko? 17, 21, 24, or 28? 24. So, 24. Ito, next batch. So, last is still here. So, naubos natin to. So, 24. So, 10 times 24. So, add lang natin yung 2,800 and 2,240. I will get my ending inventory at 30,040. So, that's, again, one major point na for this assumption. Next, let's do the cost flow. So, sa cost flow, we just need to understand what is our beginning total cost. That would be 2,550. How do we get our cost of goods purchased? It's basically 2,100 plus 1,800 plus 2,800 minus the purchase returns of 360. When we do that, we'll get the sales price of 6,340. So now, our cost of goods available for sale is 8,890. So how do we get COGS? 8,890 minus 3,040 is 5,850. So ganun lang. So kahit na may purchase return, we're not letting it affect us. What's important is we just look at number one, get the ending units in units, 110. Then uubusin mo lang, FIFO, Lish. So last is still here, 100 times 28 and 10 times 24, 3,040. Next step, get your COGAS, which is 8,890. 8,890 minus 3,040 is 5,850. So our COGS here would be 5,850 and 3,040. Now, para tumali yung buhay nyo, pag same scenario lang, tapos pinapa-use lang sa inyo yung different, always remember how much your cost of goods available for sale. Para hindi nyo lang ulit-ulitin to. So, cost of goods available for sale won't change no matter what. It won't change. Your COGAS will still remain the same, regardless of any assumption. So, use this, and then ang kukunin nyo na lang is yung ending inventory so that you can solve always for your COGS. So now, and then, if ever they ask you how much yung gross profit, just take note, how did we get the 13,350? It's just basically 6,000 plus 2,250 plus 5,500 minus the sales return. So another variation is, aside from COGS and ending inventory, we'll probably ask, what is the gross profit? So for this, kapag mas complicated siya, may 2 extra columns na lang naman na ilalagay, right? The sales revenue is just the addition of all the sales items. So for me, this is how you arrange it. You bulk sales, you bulk purchases, so that you'll be able to answer any of the problems. Next, wave. So napansin nyo, hindi na namin pinagawa yung LIFO because hindi naman siya usually ginagamit. So next, go to wave. For wave, muna, perpetual muna tayo. So moving average. So ito lang yung gusto kong i-illustrate. So at home, you can do it on yourselves. Yung average, mag-move lang siya every time there's a purchase or a purchase return. Wala tayong pakialam kung sales or sales return, it won't move the average. So, let's look at it. Right? Beginning inventory, 150 units. Ano yung cost per unit? 17. Diba? 17. And then, nagkaroon tayo ng purchase of 100 units at 21. So, what will be the balance after purchase 1? Our balance would be 250 units. How much yung total cost? So, 250 units, and then you get the total cost, which is 2,550 plus 21,000 at 2,100 is equal to 4,650. So, in terms of that, we'll be able to get sorry, laki. 4,650 divided by 250. So 18.6. For this, tatanungin niyo ako, sir, until how many decimal points? Just do until 4, right? In intermediate calculations. So now, the balance would be 18.6. Now, mangyayari is, magkakaroon ng sale of 150. Ano na yung gagamitin natin? The latest average after the balance. So 18.6. So 2,790. So ang balance natin is 100 units. Ang cost natin is 1,860. Our average stays the same after a sale. Nagkaroon ng sales return. Sales return. Bumalik yung 10 units. Our balance will still be 110 units. Ito na yung total cost, but our average stays the same. Kasi sales and sales return. Pero, nagkaroon ng purchase 2. So, 75 units plus the balance of 110 will give us 185 units after purchase 2. After January 9, ito na yung balance. May 185 units. Napansin nyo, nag-iba ulit yung unit cost. So therefore, our total cost would be 3,846. So ina-add lang natin to. So 110 plus 75, 185. 2 times 108 is 3,846. So if we divide 3,846 divided by 185, you'll get 20.79. Nag-iba yung average. So kung average is the one in blue. So 18.6, 18.6, okay lang yan. Pero after a purchase, nag-iba. 20.79. Next, so ito yung balance after purchase on January 9. Ano yung next na nangyari? Nagkaroon ng return. 15 units at 24 and 360. So, ang mangyayari is 185 minus 15. 170 na lang yung units natin after January 10. 38 minus 360, 3,486. This 3,486, we divide by 170, mag-iiba na naman yung moving average natin at 20.51. So, in the sales, how much yung gagamitin yung average? Doon sa 50 units, what average will be used? Doon sa sales sa January 10, it would be the latest average. So, if may 50 units ka, ang gagamitin mo is the 20.51. So, therefore, after sale 2, 170 units minus 50, 120 units yung balance natin, our total cost would be 2,460. It will still be the same average. Nagkaroon ulit ng purchase. So, 120 plus 100 is 220 yung balance natin. And then, 5,260. So, now our moving average will be 23.91. And then, finally, for our last sale, anong gagamitin nating moving average? The latest moving average. 23.91. 2,630. And therefore, our ending inventory is 2,630.25. Now, there's another way of getting your cost of goods sold using the moving average method. And how is that? One way is kung tinandaan yung kugas nyo at 8,890, you can just subtract the ending inventory to get your cost of goods sold. That's one way of solving it. Another way of solving it is you just look at yung mga sales items nyo. Sale 1, sales return, sales 2, and that's it. Sales 3. So 2,790 minus 186 plus 1,025 plus 2,630.25 will give you a cost of goods sold of 6,259.75. So for me, kung parang pare, na-overwhelm kayo, if moving average is the hardest to understand or matrabaho siya gawin. So, ang next priority after FIFO would be, aralin nyo na lang yung periodic of how to solve for this, right? So, but now I just wanted to focus at moving average. So now, 13,350 minus cost of goods sold of 6,259.75. Our gross profit would be 7,090.25. Yes, my questions.
Diba nag-return? Pero yung ni-return niya, yung sa sale 1.
Okay, good question. So, ito rin.
Kung yes, purchase, pero ang ni-return niya sale 1.
Yeah. So, ang mangyayari dito, yung i-multiply mo dito, hindi yung 24. Yung, So, ano lang yung tatandaan natin sa moving average? Ang tatandaan lang natin sa moving average is every time may bagong transaction, we get the balance. So, dun sa question, what is our current balance? Our current balance is 185 units. 185 units. Yung moving average is 20.79. And then meron kang 3,846 na cost. Next, yung sinabi natin is, paano kung yung purchase return hindi galing from the second batch? So nagka-return ka ng return na 15. Let's saang batch mo gusto So let's say yung return is galing sa first batch. Magkano yung unit cost ng first batch? If it's not 24, it's 21. 21 yung batch 1. So 15 times 21, sorry, mag-calculator tayo. So 15 times 21 is 315. So paano natin ginukuha yung balance? So purchase return. So every time merong purchase return, purchase or sales and sales return, we get the balance. So 185 minus 15 is 170. That's the number of units. Same pa rin as the other one. Pero